All right, we're going to get started here. Welcome to another NCSI GrubClub event. This time we're talking about HyperAutomation with Avanti neurons at work. My name is Larry Benson. I take over marketing responsibilities here at NCSI. We got Brian Hodzik here. We'll let him introduce himself here as he gets started with his presentation. Hopefully you're eating. We've heard a couple of people didn't get it. There is an email address right behind us that you can send a comment to if you have any questions about getting yours delivered. There's still a couple more hours, so we can make that happen for you.
And I apologize. I'm going to get my food delivered here in the middle of it and eat it, right, Larry? So where's my food at?
Yeah, no, it's right outside the door. It'll be there for you as soon as you're done. I promise.
Once again, doing the presentation, don't get any of the perks of eating, so left out in the cold.
All right. Well, hopefully that'll happen. As a bonus for this event, you'll have an opportunity to at the end for Brian Hodzik's presentation to request a free neurons proof of concept and receive a Habitat Home Automation Hub.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking today about hyperautomation in the enterprise. I'm a big fan of home automation. So the Habitat's a cool home automation tool. So you can kind of take some of the ideas of automating things at work and then, hey, let's go automate some things at home as well.
Yeah, so that'll be a nice thank you for those people who want to request that demo.
Yeah.
So, okay, we'll turn it over to Brian Hodzik for this presentation.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. All right, so thanks for joining, everyone. I appreciate you spending some time, spending some lunch with me here today to talk about the Avanti Neurons platform. I'm very excited about it. You're going to hear not only NCSI but Avanti kind of talk about it more and more. It's a very strategic thing that Avanti is doing with the Neurons platform. So you're going to hear about it a lot more and more. I'm going to try and delve into a particular component of that today, and that's the hyperautomation component, part of our edge intelligence and our neurons for healing component. So we're going to get into the details of what exactly that means. As part of that, I need to build a little bit more of a foundation first to talk a little bit about what Neurons is first and how it fits into the ecosystem, and then we'll kind of build up to that hyperautomation. So let's start with a little bit more of the base components, talk about how we can do some things manually, and then we're going to kind of get to that automation at the very end. So I'm going to save that for kind of the later stages of the conversation here. Let's talk about the base framework to start with. So I want to come over here to the whiteboard and draw up a little bit more about the architecture of what Neurons is, how it works, and kind of what it looks like in your organization. And please, as we're going through here, let's keep this interactive. There's a Q&A section of the webinar. Just open that up and pop your questions in here. Larry will bring them up and show them on the screen here so I can answer them kind of as we go along. So feel free to open up that Q&A and ask questions as we're kind of going through this. Okay, so let's talk about what most organizations look like out there and what their different systems are and how we're trying to patch all of these together. I talked to a lot of my companies and, they look something like this. They've got lots of different tools from lots of different vendors. Hey, we've got, Active Directory. We've got things like VMware. We've got tools like SCCM or maybe our own tool from Avanti, Endpoint Manager. Maybe we're a mobile iron customer. And I was from Pulse Secure. I used the Pulse Profiler, things like that. So you have a lot of these individual tools, and they feel like they all kind of live in their own little worlds. They're siloed off. There's a little bit of a connection between them, but there's not a great cohesive thing that kind of brings them all together. That's what Avanti Neurons is. Avanti Neurons is the concept of trying to aggregate this information into a single pane of glass in order to provide some actionable intelligence against it. So we've got these cool things called connectors. We are going to connect from these various systems. Note that we don't own all of these. That's a Microsoft product. It comes from VMware, another Microsoft product. Some of them are ours. Some of them are from other vendors. We still want to ingest that information, aggregate that information, and use those connectors to feed that data in. We're going to park that information inside of what we call a data lake. And a data lake is just a place that we park the data when we have lots of information that we may or may not be using, on a day-to-day basis. So we still want to have that information, so we kind of park it and make it available, but we don't necessarily present that all to an end user. Right there, we're going to do things like we're going to deduplicate it, deduplication, and we're going to normalize it. Think about it for a second. How many times would a device show up in here? If I have a server, it might show up in Active Directory, inside of the VMware console, inside of SCCM, and inside of my Pulse Profiler. I mean, it might show up 4 times. So we need to be able to deduplicate it, recognize that that's actually just a single device across all of those entities. And then we need to normalize it. You know, we've got instances like, you know, Hewlett-Packard, 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 comma, Inc. You know, let's bring those all down and make it so that it only looks like, you know, HP, for example. Okay, so then the destination after that could be we go to something like our asset management platform, our asset or service management platform. We could have that be the destination from where this data goes. Okay, so that's kind of the layout of what Neurons is. It's like we described, it's this cloud platform. We use these connectors, we ingest this information, store it in a data lake, and then potentially shove it up somewhere else. Okay, let's talk about how that applies to today's conversation around automation and specifically HyperAutomation. I want to add something to this list. I want to add our Neurons agent. Our Neurons agent is going to be part of that equation. It's not a required element, but it's going to be required for what we're talking about today. And we're going to focus on essentially end devices. We've got a lot of other devices out there we care about, you know, servers and printers and switches and things like that. Today we're focusing on the actual endpoints themselves. So think PCs, laptops, desktops, Macs, etc. Those are our endpoints that we're talking about today. And this is the focus of the HyperAutomation. So what does HyperAutomation actually mean? Well, we have automation. You know, a good example of that would be something like automatically creating an Active Directory account. You know, maybe you're using Avanti Service Manager, you have a workflow for an HR onboarding request, and we're actually going to reach out to Active Directory and automatically create an account, or reach out to Office 365 and create something there. So it's it gives you the ability to do things, what I would like to describe on the back end. We're automating back end functions. The difference with HyperAutomation is we want to do it here at the endpoint. So I want to focus on something like an individual workstation is having a problem, and I want to troubleshoot it. I want to understand more what's going on about it. So out at the endpoint, that's HyperAutomation. That's our Avanti Neurons for Healing, as opposed to kind of that back end creating accounts, creating virtual machines. So that's how we kind of separate out the two between automation and HyperAutomation. Okay, so that's the overall infrastructure perspective. Let's go over and jump into the console and talk about how this would actually work and some of the mechanics associated with it. Okay, so here we are in our Avanti Neurons console. A couple of cool tidbits you see right here out of the gate. We have our edge intelligence in our real-time view here. So I've installed agents on a bunch of different devices I have here at my organization. These are actually real devices with real NCSI employees out there around the country. So I think it's a really cool glimpse into what the status of your devices are. Far too many times, a lot of our systems are old-fashioned. Oh, well, here was the inventory 3 days ago. This is actually all real-time information because these agents are reporting into me right now. I don't need a VPN connection. I don't need anything to back all that traffic. All they need to be is on the internet, and it gives me the ability to see exactly where these particular devices are. So as we scroll through here, you can see I get information about, what is the computer name, who's actually logging into it, is it online, and then even down like to the location information. We can get as precise as having GPS. If the location services is enabled, it'll pick down to the exact street that those devices are on. If location services are not available, that's okay. We can still use the IP address and determine where it's at. Okay, so let's go and actually click on an individual device here. For example, if we clicked on this particular device, it's going to pull up and show us a real-time dashboard of that device. Now, when I say real-time, I'm not exaggerating there. When I clicked on it, it actually reached out to that device and pulled this information down real-time. We use an IoT protocol called MQTT that is very scalable. It's kind of built for these types of applications. Anyone that's been in the industry long enough has kind of understood, well, we've had all these things in the past. We have agents, we have communication, things like that. they never work out well. They never communicate quickly. It's all old information. We had problems with taking down WAN circuits because we were chewing up too much of the pipe. All those problems happened in the past. Those are gone in the new style of agent, where it's incredibly small, it's incredibly light. It can install in about 5 seconds. Heck, we can even go and open it up here. I think I have a downloaded copy of it. And we can run the installer of that Avanti Cloud agent. We would just run it here like this. Oh, whoops, I got to do UAC authentication really quick because I wasn't an admin. But the installation of the Neurons agent, someone get out a stopwatch and time me on what that is. Oh, whoops, I didn't have the agent information. Normally it would have that information automatically populated in here. So let's just copy and paste that across there. So if you've dealt with agents before, you know they're big and fat and slow. Like I said, our agent here is incredibly light and lean, and the installation process, takes what, 5 seconds to install? It wasn't even that. It took me longer to copy and paste that information over. So a very lightweight agent, and it gives us this really cool real-time information. So now I can see things like, tell me about CPU and memory. What about like their internet connection latency? What Wi-Fi are they connected to? Are they connected to LAN? How long have they been up? Browsers, things like that. And if I want to, I can go click on the actual individual device itself here, and it's going to pull up a more detailed dashboard. Now, at this level, we're talking about not necessarily automating a whole bunch of stuff. I want to have a crawl, walk, run approach to some of my levels of automation. So we're still in the crawling and walking phase here. We're not yet running in some of the things I'm going to show you. But you can see here, I've got more information from an inventory perspective. I can see the performance, the CPU and memory over there. I can understand how many tickets were opened against this particular device and what their status was, the state of their hard drive, IP addresses, things like that. When I'm a technician, what is the typical thing that I'm going to do when an end user calls me and says they have a problem? Well, I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to open a ticket. And I've got remote control. That's one of the tried and true methods of troubleshooting that our technicians have that is usually the first thing that they go and grab. And we have that. We've got remote control right there. Remember, Avanti invented remote control. We have a patent from 1987 for software-based remote control. So it's there, but I don't want that to be the first tool that your technician grabs. I want them to think about other things before that, because think about what happens with a remote control session. I mean, I've got to kick off the user. I've got to authenticate. They're not logged in as admin. I mean, I'm 4 or 5 minutes into the session before I know what their IP address is, as an example. So I don't want to teach my technicians that that's the first thing that you want to do. I want to give them a couple of other tricks up their sleeve in order to help troubleshoot different things. So I've got a really cool thing right here called Detect Outages. Let's open that up. Let's see what that does. Okay, so this machine, as far as I'm concerned, is on the other side of the planet. It's just connected to the internet. There's nothing special about it. But look, I can go run an IP config on that machine in that amount of time. So how quick was that? I mean, that was 1 second worth of time. I'm able to come back and take a look at that information. I don't need to go all of those extra steps. Or what if I want to go ping it? Let's go ping www.google.com. Again, it's not that a technician couldn't do this. I just want to get it to them faster. I want to shave off 2 or 3 or 4 minutes off of their different troubleshooting sessions, because those things add up when you're dealing with a lot of customers over time. So this gives me some really cool tricks up my sleeve here from a networking perspective. You can see I can do an NS lookup, I could do a trace route, I could flush their DNS, lots of different cool things there, as well as, under performance, I can look at what processes are running. Oh, hey, here's this Microsoft Photos.exe. Maybe it's using up a bunch of CPU or a bunch of RAM. Maybe I want to go stop that. So bringing that information to the technician faster without having to have them remote control is a big valuable thing and part of our automation tools here. So here I'm pulling up services. I'm scrolling down here. Maybe the print spooler service is stopped after that big print spooler vulnerability that we had out recently. So you could come in here and take a look at that and start it or stop it from a services perspective. So Those are some things that I'm going to give to my technician in order to help doing troubleshooting. But I want to go one step further than that. As you go and try and diagnose the different problems that you have when our customers call in, you're probably going to have those common issues. We all know about password resets and things like that. But after that, there's probably a list of 5 or 6 things that are a very common problem, and they are ripe for automation. Maybe it's rebuilding a profile, or giving them access to something, or they have an issue with something, we have to restart a service. What I want to do is I want to create an ad hoc version of automation that we can give to your technician. So over here on the right-hand side, I'm going to scroll down here. You can see that I've created several custom actions here that my organization has from an automation perspective. These are examples of, again, things that are low-hanging fruit. They are not incredibly complex that take a technician 3 hours to fix. These are the common problems. Let's try and shave off some of those issues that are the easier ones. I'm a pragmatist when it comes to things like automation and AI. We are not going to be taken over and losing our jobs to AI and automation anytime soon. I mean, all you have to do is ask your Alexa for something that's slightly different and she has no idea what you're talking about. That should tell you kind of where we're at. Additionally, we have users. If users suddenly wise up and start fixing their own problems, again, we'll be out of a job. I'm not worried about that happening in a little bit. What I want to do is shave off some of the tasks. Don't let anyone tell you we're going to shave off all of them. I just want to peel off, 20, 30, 40% of those things. That's still a huge savings that we can accomplish there, and we can focus on the more strategic things. Most of my customers say, hey, our hair's on fire so much, we don't have time to do strategic things because we're too busy putting out the fires. Let's try and have a little bit of automatic fire suppression. So here are just some examples. I could rebuild the user's profile. I could do an Office 365 reactivation. Maybe I do some things with point of sale and I'm uploading the point of sale database log or fixing their DNS server. These are things that a technician chooses to run. So it's an ad hoc, meaning they click on the button. The technician was smart enough to say, the problem is most likely your Office 365 is not activated. Instead of reading the knowledge base article and figuring it out and then trying to execute it, I have created it as an automatic task. So the technician's just going to go and click on that. They just confirm that they want that to run. And then it's going to go kick off on that particular end machine and just come back and tell us that it's been completed. So now I can make it happen very, very easily from a user's perspective in order to run something that would be maybe a medium level of complexity. So where does this come from? What does that mean? I just said rebuild profile or Office 365 activation. How do I create those, or where do they exactly come from? Let's go and talk about that. Let's go up here to our neurons. So the neurons for healing and neurons for workspace is that true hyper automation platform that we've been talking about. When we talked about the crawl, walk, run, crawling and walking are some of the stuff that I've showed you so far. I want to step over into the run aspect where we could actually start looking for more advanced things. So let's go and open up our neurons for healing here. And let's go and create a brand new neuron. So I'm going to open this up and I'm going to go create a new one. So first of all, we have all these different queries on the left-hand side. These are things that we're going to look for. And then we have actions that we can take. And then we can also do things like filtering or running custom actions down here at the bottom. We also have a marketplace. Go click on the marketplace in the upper right-hand corner here, and you can see all these additional components that we can add into our tree. Right now, it's currently only Avanti that's creating these actions, but that's going to change in the future, where we could be talking about interacting with third-party systems, potentially as well. So let's go back over here to our neuron itself. Okay, again, I'm going to make a query. And then I'm going to have an action run against that and maybe do some filtering. So what are the kinds of things that we can ask for? What kind of queries could we do out there? We do things like, take a look at antivirus or look at their BIOS information. What about Bitlocker? What about certificates or Chrome extensions or CPU usage, device uptime, disk encryption, smart status of their hard drive, free disk space, what their IP is, their logon performance, whether having poor disk performance, TLS connections, what if their user profile is a certain size, what if having web latency issues. So lots of different things we can query against. And then we have all these different actions. Let's not just tell you about the information. That's our edge intelligence tells you, hey, you've got all this stuff. Here's all these data points. but we want to take action against them. Automation is automatically taking action. So here I have the different actions that I can take. I could, clean up their hard drive. I could create a ticket, change something in the registry, show a message to the end user, download a file, turn on the firewall, turn off the firewall, map a drive, reboot the device, send an email, start a service, turn on the firewall, turn off the firewall, uninstall a piece of software, do something with UAC. And then we have the ability to filter. I'll show you why we would care about that. And then even custom actions. I can just run a PowerShell command or a bash command on a machine. I love this. I'm a big supporter of plagiarism. Go Google something to do in PowerShell. Someone's probably already written it. And let's copy and paste it into our script here. So how does this work? What would I do? Well, let's go through here and say something like this. Let's start with a drive health. So SMART is the detection logic that hard drives have to predict whether they are going through a failure, other bad sectors, other heat problems, kind of things like that. So we have the SMART health of the drive. We can query that. We go down here to filter those results because I don't want to look at every single one of them. So I want to connect the two. Look, I just click and drag that. The two are now connected. Over here on the right-hand side, here's all my different properties. So look, I've got a status. So I could go in here and say status not equals to healthy. I can't remember what SMART status exactly is, but here I've said if the status not equals to healthy, then something's going wrong. I've got 10,000 hard drives out there. I don't care about the ones that are healthy. I only care about the ones that the status is not healthy. Now what? What do we do in this particular context? Well, a bad hard drive or a predicted bad hard drive is definitely a problem. What would normally happen in that context? Let's kind of theorize it for a second and brainstorm on what would normally happen. Well, normally we wouldn't know. We're not checking on the SMART status of the hard drive. The hard drive continually gets worse. Maybe it even performs poorly and has poor disk performance for the end user. They're impacted by it. Ultimately, hard drive fails. That user's now out of work. We don't know how long it's going to take, especially in the days of COVID. Maybe we've got to ship something out to them. Heck, it could be a week before they get their device again. It is a long time until we get to the resolution of actually solving their problem. Well, what could we do? Is there an answer to that? Where's that HyperAutomation? What could happen? I could go down here and I could, for example, display a user interaction. So user interaction, I'm going to connect that down here. I'm going to say something like, your hard drive is failing. Make sure your backup software is working. So that's the message I would show to the end user. And then in this case, it's a piece of hardware failing. I usually need a technician to help fix that. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say, I want to create a ticket. So I'm going to go create a ticket in my service management system. And I would just say which system I want to connect it in. And then I would just go in and put the symptom and service in the category where I'd want that to land. So now let's think about what's going to happen. As soon as a hard drive in our organization that has the Avanti Neurons agent installed on it, as soon as it comes to a failure, we are going to recognize that, and it could just be a predicted failure where we think it's going to fail. We're going to tell the user, we're going to recommend that they do a backup, and then we're going to create a ticket for them. Wouldn't that be great to actually proactively reach out to the user and say, we know that this is only smoke right now. It's not a raging inferno. Everyone talks about putting out the fires. Let's put out it when it's just smoldering. Let's get ahead of it. It solves problems a lot quicker. So that would be an example of solving a problem with a bad hard drive. What about other things that you could look at? What other problems potentially users are going to have? I don't know. What about things like web latency? Web latency, a lot of people working from home, they're on their crummy Wi-Fi connection. What are we going to do about that? Let's go take a look at their internet connection. So I'm going to go to erp.com, whatever your ERP system is, and I'm going to say something like this. If your latency is over 750 milliseconds, you're probably having a pretty bad time at that. You're probably not enjoying your days of using that particular application. So again, if I see that web latency reaches a certain amount, then I want to, again, I don't always have to interact with the user, but I can. I could go in here and say, hey, your Wi-Fi sucks. Go to a Starbucks, and I could tell them that information. But I don't always want to interact with the end users. Let's go up here and look for something like the Bitlocker status. Okay, so I've mandated that Bitlocker needs to be enabled in my organization. I just need to go in here and say, all drives are enabled. If no drives are enabled, that's a problem. I care about that. That's a concern to me. So I'm going to come down here and run an action. And I don't think I have an action right here out of the box to enable BitLocker. Let me scroll through here really quick, see if I have one. I don't think so. So let's go down here to PowerShell action. I'm going to run a PowerShell action, and then I'm just going to do a quick Google. How do you enable BitLocker as part of PowerShell? I'm just going to paste that text in there. So now this query is going to be evaluated and look for devices that don't have BitLocker enabled, and then it's going to kick off that action to enable that particular system. So what are some other examples we could go through? We could look at things like, what if their CPU usage is very high, if their logon performance is poor. Logon performance is a notoriously obnoxious thing for end users, that they complain about. We're holding them up from doing their job. And heck, it's maybe sitting there for 5 minutes doing who knows what. We've got other problems to help solve actually how to make those logins better, but first we need to identify it. So we could go in here and say, hey, if they're poor or terrible, I want to go and run a Neuron Alert. A Neuron Alert is something I, as an administrator, see, and I could have an action based on that. Send an email or just show it in the console to say, hey, I care about these machines that are having poor login performance. I want to potentially do something about it. So again, we do a query, we potentially filter it out, and then we have an action that's done against it. So the goal would be we sit down with you and we try and identify those common actions, those common problems that your users are having, and then see which ones are ripe for the picking to automate. Again, we're not going to do all of them. There's really complex ones. Let's go with the easy ones and maybe even the medium difficult ones. And let's bring an automation system around that. HyperAutomation means doing it all automatically, but we already talked about how we can give that to a technician. There's that middle ground where maybe we should do this. We don't necessarily want to do it automatically, so let's have those custom actions show up here for a technician, and then the technician makes the choice to kick off that action if it's something that we're not, we're not completely fine with completely automatically doing it and having the system happen on its own. Down here in the bottom, we can actually schedule different things to go out there as well. There's often times where, maybe as part of that troubleshooting, we found out that we have a bad DNS server. And I want to see who else has that. So here I have some examples of where I have run it in the past. And what I've done is I did a query against their IP address. I filtered the results to see if their DNS server did not contain this IP address that I was looking for. And then it gave me the alert based on the number of devices. So, yep, sure enough, look at all these devices right here that did not have the correct DNS IP address set on their IP adapter. So it doesn't have to be actionable all the time. It could just simply be knowledgeable information for you to then consume and do something with. So this is what a Neuron Alert looks like. You can see the number of times that I've run it. We can schedule these to run on a regular basis, or the HyperAutomation, we can have them run 24/7. The things like the checking the hard drive smart status, you're probably not going to run that as a daily thing. Let's have it running 24/7 on every single device. So the instant that that hard drive thinks that it's going to start go bad, let's have that trigger it and start going down the path. Okay, so I want to talk about a couple of other things in the Neurons platform here, and that's inside of our edge intelligence. Oftentimes after we found that we've had one individual problem, we want to always ask the question, hey, is it systemic? Is this happening elsewhere? Are we having bigger problems out there? So our edge intelligence helps us ask those kinds of questions. We talked about one that was associated with things like the Bitlocker. What is the status of Bitlocker? Did I have an action to go and kick that off? Well, I can actually type in a query up here at the top. So I can just say Bitlocker, and it knows what I mean. It's just a natural language processing engine, so I don't have to be incredibly precise with my language. It will know and understand what I say. And look what it came back and said. Hey, I've actually real-time queried these devices. This is not just stale information from 5 days ago. And I can tell you what's the status of those devices. And hey, you've got a bunch not protected. Well, who is that? Oh, look at all these devices. I see their hard drives, and I see that their encryption is set to no, and the percentage encrypted is null. What if I want to fix that? No problem. Hey, look, I've got an automation component here to go and enable that Bitlocker. So if you're nervous about saying, hey, let's turn it on across the board and just automatically do all this stuff, These are great baby steps to get us in that direction. The crawl, walk, run approach does a good crawl or walk. I can go and individually enable this. Or what other things are examples of things I can query for? You know, the firewall. Show me the status of the firewall on my different devices. Here's all the different devices, whether it's enabled or not. Oh, that one's disabled. Let's go and enable the firewall there or disable it. Here's a funny one, service spooler. Everyone probably talked about the print spooler big vulnerability we had a week or two ago. We need to worry about what's out there and who's running it and who's stopped and who started. Here's all the different devices. Maybe I need to go through and stop those services or start those services. So I can quickly pull down information around the services that are running, or show me local admins. Oh, hey, we found some unexpected local admins. This user right here shouldn't be in there. Let's go and remove it from local admins. It's not that you couldn't do all of these things before. There's plenty of manual ways to approach this, but we've tried to centralize it here into a single place and make it very, very easy for your technicians to be able to run these kinds of actions. Okay, so like I said, natural language search up here at the top. There was a really cool feature that it has that it's hard to demonstrate, but I went up here and one time searched for the word map because I'm like, oh, that map is cool. How do I get back to that? And in the past, it came back and said, I don't know what you mean. You said map. I don't know what that means. And I came back and said, oh, that was kind of a bummer. I guess I'll move on with life. And I logged into the console a couple days later and a little bubble popped up and it said, hey, you asked me 2 days ago about map. I didn't know what that meant. I know what it means now. You meant map. Let me go take that. You want to try it? So it is really cool that it can, it's a combination of human input and some machine learning to better understand what our users are actually asking for and giving them the correct answers. So even if we don't have an answer for it today, it is most likely going to be added in the near future. So other cool things like Chrome extensions here. How do you know what applications are out there and what devices are what devices have what Chrome browser extensions installed on? That's usually a very difficult thing to find out. And I can tell you, exactly who's running the feedback or docs or Chrome PDF and give you all the results of that. Okay, so I've been talking for quite a bit, so I'm going to pause for a second here and review our questions. Okay, so our first question is this an on-premise service? And no, this is a cloud service. It's only in the cloud. It's not something that you can install on-premise. We've done that a lot in the past where we have both an option for on-premise and cloud. This one is exclusively running up in the cloud. Can you connect it to Avanti's Endpoint Manager is the next question. So the answer is yes. Remember, we talked about those connectors being a big part of that. Let me go jump down into that and actually show you how the connectors work and how easy they are to set up. So we have something called a connector server. I would just go and click Add Connector here. Here is just a small list of the connectors that we have available today. So, things like AWS and CrowdStrike and our Endpoint Manager, our patch for Microsoft Endpoint Manager, Jamf, Office 365, Azure, Azure Directory, Rapid7, OneLogon, Okta, Salesforce, ServiceNow, Tenable, VMware vCenter, Workspace ONE. All these different things we can go and connect to. And they're very, very easy. Let's go find our Endpoint Manager. So here's our Avanti Endpoint Manager. You will just put in the connector name here. In this case, we talk directly to the SQL database. So we'd put our SQL information in here. We would put the authentication information, and that's kind of it. We're done. We're now sucking that information in. So you can see that I've actually created these connectors to all these different systems here. In my demo environment, I've got all these different connectors for things like the Pulse Profiler or AWS or Azure. This is great, maybe not from an automation perspective, but when we're doing things like asset management, we have all these places that data goes that we don't really have control over. AWS and Azure, well, geez, I don't know how those systems work. Now I've got just a quick API connection I can talk to and pull down that information, very, very easily. Okay, next question here. Do you have a connection to SCCM? Yes, we do. It's actually been renamed. Microsoft went through a renaming process, so it's actually right here. That's the patch for MEM. There's somewhere in here it will say Microsoft Endpoint Manager right there. No, that's actually Intune. Here is the Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager, MECM, which was formerly called SCCM. So we have a connection to SCCM right there. Okay, next question. Do I have to have other Avanti products in order to buy this? No, Neurons can live on its own. We have great connections to these other systems like EPM and our patch products and Asset Manager and things like that. But you could just flat out go purchase this on your own and have it be independent from the rest of that. There's really not a lot of infrastructure associated with it to get it up and going. Okay, next question. We own Avanti Service Manager. How does this connect to that? Okay, so Avanti Service Manager is Service and Asset Manager. You know, it's two parts of the same portfolio there. Let's kind of pull ours up really quick and log into it. So here's my Service and Asset Manager instance. What we're going to do is we have a connector for that. So in here somewhere is the Avanti Service Manager connector, and we can pull down ticket information. That's actually kind of cool if we open it up here. Let me show you kind of from a user's perspective. I've been showing you a lot of interaction from a device perspective, but here if I went in and searched for a user, we're going to, since we have a connector to Active Directory, I can pull down their Active Directory information. So, you know, like here's a bunch of AD information, what their phone number is, who they connect to, things like that. I can see their Active Directory status over here on the side. I can even kick off some actions here. Maybe I want to reset their password or unlock their account or something like that. Look at their devices. So we can pull this information in, and then we are going to, we talked about how we would clean that up, we would deduplicate it, we would normalize it, and then we shove that up into the asset management system. So if you haven't seen it before, we have an entire asset management system. I wouldn't describe Neurons as asset management. It's cool. It does discovery. We can find things. We've got all this really cool edge intelligence stuff. But asset management, I would define as things like, you know, who purchased it? What was the purchase order number that we used? Did we, is there a depreciation schedule associated with it? What is the amount of devices we have in stock? What is our product catalog for how we should buy standards instead of just buying random stuff? So Asset Manager is kind of the long-term destination for this information for total asset management, as opposed to the Neurons platform I would describe as inventory and discovery. We don't really track some of that more nuanced stuff from an asset perspective, like you know, who was it assigned to versus who's actually consuming it. That's an asset management thing. We'll feed into that though, because Asset Manager, if you don't have good discovery data, you can struggle with that. It might be a problem to track that down. Okay, so keep the questions coming. I think that was it for now. I'm going to stop for a second. We have a quick poll we're going to throw out there. This is for our Neurons proof of concept. So this is all very easy to set up. All you need is an email address and, you know, maybe an hour's worth of time to fiddle around with it. So we're going to put up a poll here if you're interested in taking a look at it. We have, for the first 5 people that contact us and set up this, we'll give you that Habitat Home Automation Hub as a thank you gift to kick the tires on it. If you haven't dealt with NCSI before, know that we're not these big, heavy-handed salespeople. We're a very technology-oriented organization. So you're not going to drown in phone calls just because you click on this button. We are very sensitive to that kind of thing. So we appreciate you attending even this webinar today. We don't want to you know, harass you until you want to figure out how to block our phone calls. So we'll pop up that poll. Go ahead and click on it if you're interested. If you're not, you can also follow up at a later date, and we can talk about you know, doing this at a later date, or if you wanted like a more in-depth dive associated with it, please let us know. This was just very much skimming the surface on what the Neurons platform can do. I'd love to sit down with you and actually show you in your environment how we could potentially do some of that that automation. If you've never dealt with NCSI before and you don't have a salesperson assigned to your account, you can see we have an email address up here where you can just email directly, and it'll hit our sales team, and one of them can talk to you about it. And we can give you a more in-depth demo, or like I said, you can go through and do that Neurons proof of concept. Since it's cloud-based, like I said, very easy to set up, very little time commitment. Give me an hour and hopefully I can jump on the phone with you and help you kick the tires on it and show you some of the nuance. And away we go. So like I said, please click on that poll if you're interested. We've already got many people clicking on it, even more than I think we have 5 of these, and we've already got more people that have clicked on yes, they want to kick the tires. So please hit us up quickly if you are interested in seeing that. I'd like to thank everyone for coming today and having lunch with us. Larry, I didn't see the delivery guy come for my lunch, so something we're going to have to work on. Maybe for next week, so you guys can watch me eat. Wouldn't that be great? If you did have any problems, please hit up that same email address up here. Like Larry said, it's still valid until 2 o'clock local time. So if you haven't gone and fulfilled your lunch, lunch is on us today. So please take a look at that link or email this email address above, or Ashley A. Thompson at ncsi.us, and we'll help get you sorted out. We're going to record this and put this on YouTube. So if any of your colleagues wanted to see exactly what's going on, please take a look at that. And you can always check our website. We do lots of these kind of events and try and teach you more about some of our cool technologies. So again, thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it, and have a great day, everyone.